property rights. And Jamie leaned over and he whispered in my ear and he said, Matt, just remember that if you stand up for private property rights, you're always in high clover. That's what he said. And you know what? Jamie was a statesman, and he is a wonderful guy. And the only person in the Salmon family that's better than Jamie is Sue. And so I'm glad they're both here tonight. Two of the great Republican leaders of our state, so thank you for being here. And the Corporation Commission guy, Gary Pierce, so thank you. And his wife, who actually worked with me when I was a congressman. She ran my office. Okay, she says she worked for me, but actually she told me what to do and I did it. Let's be real. She's a wonderful, wonderful lady. And I also do want to say, with all my heart, how lucky I am to be married to my best friend of 42 years, Nancy. And my sweet and oldest daughter, Laura, who's on the Mesa School Board, is here. And you want to talk about a thankless job where you get kicked in the teeth every day. Try running for the school board where you got the teachers union and angry parents on your back every step of the way. But I'll tell you something, she's a chip off the old block. And she feels just like I do. She loves the teachers, but she can't stand the teachers union. So I love her for that. Laura, every time you look at them, just stick your tongue out at them. I'm proud of her. She's doing a great job. It's really terrific to be here tonight. You know, I think about the time that I served in Congress. I ended up going 2 different times. And somebody asked me one time, they said, well, Matt, didn't you learn the first time that you didn't want to be back there? And I said, it's kind of like that old joke. The guy that's beating his head on the wall until it turns bloody. And somebody walks up to him and they said, what are you doing that for? And he said, because it feels so good when I stop. And that's kind of how it was when I came back home again. And Andy, you're going to feel really good when you stop too, when you get to come back, but just don't do it too quickly. You need to keep beating your head on the wall a little bit more because we need you in Washington.
That's right.
And I will tell you this, folks, from the bottom of my heart, if it wasn't for the Freedom Caucus, I think all would be lost. Right now, I really believe that with all my heart. If it wasn't for the Freedom Caucus being the conscience of the Republican Party, and what is it, Andy, about 35 people now?
More than that.
Over 40?
I'm not at liberty to say. We use that as leverage against leadership.
Okay, all right. That's right, that's right. And the sad thing is that my experience back there was just as many fights as we had with Obama, we had with our own leadership as well, because all they wanted to do was capitulate. And all they wanted to do was be popular with K Street, which he just described to you. Those are the fat cats and the lobbyists that want to keep everything going. And they wanted to make sure that what will never happen, that the media is actually going to love us. It's never going to happen as long as we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. And Andy said something, one thing that I'm going to take umbrage with. He said that we're at an existential crossroad right now. I don't think we're at the crossroad. I think we took the wrong turn a long time ago. I think we've gone way far down the path and we're about to drop off the cliff. And if we're going to fix things in this country, it's going to take some guts and some courage and some fight and some knowledge about how the government actually was created to work.
Right.
And our founding fathers, they really had the antidote for this a long time ago. They created it in the Bill of Rights, the 10th Amendment to the Constitution. They were very clear when they put the enumerated powers for Congress that was an exhaustive list. Those enumerated powers were all the powers that Congress has. That's it. And that's in Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution. There is nothing more that Congress has the power to do. And then it said in the 10th Amendment that all the powers not listed are left to the people and the states. We've got to remember that, folks, and we've got to stand up and fight.
Right.
For over 100 years, Washington has been encroaching on the states. Really, ever since Woodrow Wilson, wouldn't you say, Andy?
Yeah, at least.
At least, maybe even earlier than that. But the fact is, Woodrow Wilson expanded the presidential powers and really tried to eradicate the Article 1 authority and made the presidential powers more and more and more powerful. And every president since him, both Republican and Democrat, have taken more and more authority, eroding the separation of powers. I don't mean to make this a constitutional lesson, but the fact is our founding fathers, they gave us the tools to deal with such a time as this. But it takes courage, and it takes knowledge, and it takes standing up and fighting. And so, look, I need another political job like a hole in the head. I really feel that. It's a nasty business. And no matter what you do, if you're doing it right, you're going to be vilified. And so I'm doing this because I have 9 beautiful little grandchildren that I'm about to leave a country to. I'm 63 years old. I'm really, in that twilight of my life, so to speak, and I want to make it count. I really do. But I think about my parents, my mom and dad, Bob and Gloria Salmon. They grew up during the Great Depression. Very, very difficult time. My mom was one girl with 5 boys. She grew up on a ranch in central Utah, and she left home when she was 16 years old because they didn't really have enough money to pay for food for the whole family. And so she left and she moved to Atlanta, Georgia to become a nanny. She quit school. My mom never did graduate from high school. She was too embarrassed to ever tell me that. I didn't even find that out until after she passed away. She was a very well-read woman, and you'd never guess that she hadn't graduated from high school. I thought she was as smart as most PhDs I've ever met. That's not saying a lot, but because I've met a few of them. But the fact is, my mom understood sacrifice, and my dad proudly went to fight in World War II. That war, by the way, if you haven't, I don't know if you're a history buff, but there's a really, really wonderful book called The Glory and the Dream that goes through the history of the United States from the 1920s all the way to the 1970s. And the fact is, those first 2 years of World War II, nobody expected us to win. We were getting our tail kicked by the Japanese in the air and by the Germans in the sea. We were not doing well, but Yankee ingenuity got it all together, and we fought back and we won. Just like God. That's right, and we thank God. That's exactly right. You're 100% right. It was just like thinking about the battle that made us a nation. Can you even imagine a bunch of ragtag soldiers coming together against the world superpower, Great Britain? And we won that war. That was God. That was his hand. Because he had something really important in mind. You know what it was? It was a document that is the blueprint for our country. That's what he had in mind. It was the Constitution of the United States.
Amen.
And anyway, we're at that threshold once again. And I think about the country that my mom and dad left me. They left me a country that's far better than the one they were left. I don't feel that right now. As I look into my little grandchildren's eyes, I don't feel like we're in a place where this is a better America than I inherited.
Right.
But you know what? I learned from my father that you don't sit down, you stand up and you fight with everything that you got. And so, to use Andy's words, I've thrown myself into the crucible once again. And it's not fun, folks. It's not. I mean, the funny little jokes about the Chinese. Most my opponents are out there saying that I'm a spy for China. Just like they said Trump was a Russian agent. But the fact is, I love this country with all of my heart. I would die for it. I would do anything for this country. And I would do anything to leave a legacy of freedom for my children and my grandchildren. Ronald Reagan said that freedom is always just one generation away from extinction. Well, folks, I don't think I've ever seen the real possibility that we would actually lose our freedom at any point in my life, but I feel that's where we're at now. And I feel like the federal government, you know, if capitalism is so bad, if it's so horrible, then why aren't people trying to cross the fence into Venezuela or into Cuba or into North Korea or into China? They're not trying to cross those fences because it's not a good way of life. And the people that are trying to come here are trying to escape those kinds of countries. And some of them have some pretty bad intentions on their mind. They like to do some harm within our country. So I want to wrap this up, but I want you to know that I intend to fight every day for our states' rights, to fight for the 10th Amendment, to stand up against the federal government, and whether it's dealing with the mass illegal immigration that's happening within our state. Look, if the federal government's not going to get the job done, we have the right to stand up for our own sovereignty and our own borders. Then we'll get it done. And let them try to come and challenge us. Because there's a guarantee in that document again. In Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution, it says that the federal government shall guarantee the states that they shall be free from invasion. Well, if we're not being invaded right now, I don't know what it is. And we have a right to stand up and protect our own sovereignty of our own borders as well. And we're going to get that done. There's a lot more to talk about, folks, but I don't want to just wax on forever politically. The fact is, I think those of you that know me know that I am the real deal. And then when and I don't throw out promises lightly. And one of the best things I ever did, besides marrying Nancy, was talking this guy into running for my seat, Andy Biggs. He said to me, when I first got elected, by that whopping margin, 27 votes, was it 27 or 20?
Who cares?
Who cares?
It still said congressman on it. That's
right, still says congressman. But when he won that election, I remember he said, I want to fill his shoes. He's so much more than filled my shoes. It's not even funny. I'm so proud of him.
Superstar.
I am so proud of the job that he's done and the fight that he's taking. I can't even imagine. Look, it was a hard decision for me to step away, knowing that we were far from complete, knowing that there was still so much more fight to do. But when Andy said yes, I felt like the weight was so lifted off my shoulders. I felt like Atlas had been able to put the world down. And I love you, brother, for doing it. You're a wonderful man. Thank you. And my dear friend, Mike Broomhead, who has been hosting this evening, I just want to thank him. He's, I first got to know Mike. His brother was actually killed in service of our country. And greater love hath no man than this, to give his life for his friends. We all know that from the Bible. And Mike came onto the political scene at that time, standing up for freedom and fighting for the cause of our military and our military veterans. And there's been nobody more tireless that's fought for the freedom of this country and for the people that put on the uniform than Mike Broomhead. And I love you too, brother, and I appreciate you being here tonight. Thank you. So I couldn't get this done without you, and I appreciate you being here. And I'm not going to ask you for help in my campaign. I'm going to let Mike do the dirty work. So.